Hello, my name is Carl Surrey and this is a video tutorial for the Facebook group called Fans of Serif Software, and we're going to be looking at Affinity Photo. I'm doing the PC version, but I'm guessing this will pretty much work the same in the Mac version. And what we're looking at is to make a montage image. Now this came about because Martin Mackay made this image that you can see here on screen, and I think he was trying to follow my old PhotoPlus tutorial that I made many moons ago. But there are some problems with this image, mainly, and I'm not having a go at Martin here because he's still learning the process and the program. You can see this background doesn't go right up to the edge down here on the right, nor along the bottom. So you just got this white line. That could be easily cropped off. But also, where he's blended the images into the background, they're sort of rather straight edges rather than a gradual fade into the background. So it just needs to sort of tinker with the way he's blending these images in, and also because like some of these are blue, some of them are coloured, which is not necessarily Martin's fault as such. It's a case of which blending mode that you pick to use with the background. If I look at this one, this is the original one that I did in PhotoPlus, and as you can see, you can, because the style I wanted was to have some of the graininess of the background image sort of affect the images that I added to it. The blending mode I picked suited the image, or at least in my opinion, I think it suited the image. But maybe in Martin's case, as you can see, like the background is sort of coming through, especially these coloured shots here, it is coming through and affecting the look of the image, which is, not necessarily a good thing for a montage like this where it's mainly photographs of people rather than, in my case, objects. And I just did a very quick copy of the original PhotoPlus one that I made, and it's not exactly the same, but I just checked whether the blending modes were different or worked in a different way in Affinity Photo than they did in PhotoPlus. And on my little quick test, I think they pretty much work the same way. In fact, Affinity Photo has a lot more blending modes than PhotoPlus ever did. But if you do want a written version that you can probably follow, although it's written for PhotoPlus, it should pretty much, if you can adapt fairly easily, it should pretty much work in the same way in Affinity Photo. There is a PDF version which is in the file section of the Facebook group of Fans of Serif Software, and it was made a long time ago, and it just explains how I did that image and what have you. But one thing I will say about the blending mode, this was an adaptation of a Photoshop tutorial, and the chap that did the tutorial said that the 5 best blending modes for making a montage image was multiply, screen, overlay, soft light and hard light. Now if I remember correctly, I pretty much use hard light most of the time on my PhotoPlus montage, but I think in this version I'm going to do now with Martin's images, I'm going to pretty much be using normal blending mode most of the time, but the blending mode that you use really is highly dependent on the background you're using, the image you're using, So what you see in this video may not necessarily work on your montage that you want to make. It is a case of trial and error and your own personal taste. I will include a link to the original PhotoPlus tutorial if you wanted to watch that in the description for this video. It's probably further down the description, so you may have to click on the show more button to see all of the description for this video. Right, hopefully that's covered the preamble. I will sort of go away now and I'll close down some of these programs that I don't need, and I'll open up some of the images that I do need to make a copy of Martin's montage here. Martin has kindly supplied me with pretty much all of the images that he used, and I will try and copy it as best I can and show you my version of it. You may not like the end result, Martin may not like the end result, but this is how I would have done it if they had been my pictures, and hopefully you can pick and choose which options you think work and try something different if you don't think it worked. So I'll be back in a tick. Okay, I have shut down the programs that I don't need, and I have opened up 3 images that I will start off with, and the background image, and I'm leaving the original that Martin made just so I can sort of reference which one goes where. So first thing I need to do is to make a new document, so I'll come to File, New, and I'm going to make it A4 centimeters, 300 dots per inch, transparent background, and I don't necessarily need the margin, so I'll take that away and then just click OK. So the first thing I want to do on this blank background is to add the background that Martin used, which I'm pretty sure he got from a royalty-free website. Can't remember which one he said it was now, but so it should be okay for me to use and show you how he made his image. So in fact you can see on this that white line is down the side and along the bottom on his background, so he obviously didn't stretch it out far enough before he saved it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to select all, then to edit, copy, come back to my new background, and then I'm going to come to edit and paste. So I'll then move to the move tool, and then I'll just grab hold of one of these nodes just to nudge that over that way, and just to nudge that down a little bit that way. So that should get rid of the white line down the side and down the bottom. I'll maybe just nudge it down a little bit more just to double check that it is right over to the edge. So there we have the background. Now what I will now do is I will just click and highlight this layer, and I will right click and I will duplicate. Now the reason I'm doing this is, let me just come off this tool to get rid of the bounding box. The reason I'm doing this is I said to Martin about his original image that, along with the faults that I've already mentioned, and again this is my own personal taste, is that I thought that blue was a bad colour for the images that he was picking, because if it's pictures of your holiday in Egypt and Tunisia, I would imagine yellow or orange or whatever, a sand colour, would have better suited like the mood of the images, which is something you do need to think about when you are making a montage, is does the background suit whatever it is you're going to be making. But if you were saying making pictures, montage pictures of a factory or something like that, you may want a sort of a grimy metal texture or background. And although this blue is perfectly okay, in my personal opinion, the yellow would have been better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to alter the color of this layer, and I will turn it off, and I will work on the blue layer, and then at some points I can always click the yellow layer back on just to see whether it works better in the yellow or the blue. So I just need to recolor this particular copy that I've made. And you don't have to do this, but if you want to try different layers to see which colors work, you could copy this if you want. So I'll come to the adjustment panel and pick recolor. Now by default it will start off like with red, 100% red, and hue all the way down here at 0, but I'm going to make the hue 35, and I'm going to make the saturation 60, just to give it that sort of orangey, hopefully sandy color look. And then I will click merge, and then if I come back to the layers, that has merged that effect just into the layer that it was sitting above, not affecting the blue layer below. So I can just turn that off and hide it, and then I can continue to work on the blue layer. So now we want our first image, which is going to be this one here. Now you could save yourself some time before you start adding pictures to your montage, because we are going to be deleting, or not so much deleting, but blending away some of this not wanted image at the top. So you could, if you want, crop it before you bring it in to the montage. So I will just lose some of this. It just saves a bit of time. There's a lot less I need to cut off. So that's going to be hopefully better. So now I've got it a bit smaller, I'll do select all, edit, copy, come back to this image I'm working on, then edit and paste. Now obviously now this is going to be too big for the overall image that we are working on, so I'll come to the move tool. I will come over to one of the corner nodes until the double-ended arrow appears, and I'm going to hold down the control key and then left click and drag the mouse to reduce the size, and holding down the control key will keep the proportions correct, and it will all stay in proportion. And I'll just click and drag this down here to the bottom. I'm not going to go right to the edges, or I'm just going to go about there roughly. I can always resize it because it's on its own layer. We can always come back to it and resize it later if something's not working, but for now I will leave it like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a layer mask to this. Now you could use the eraser tool, which I believe is the eraser brush, and erase away what you don't want. But if you make a major mistake, you've either got to keep pressing Control and Z, or if you make a major mistake and you've gone on from that without noticing it, you can't really come back without having to restart all over again, because you've erased it away. Using a layer mask, you can in effect erase things away, but you can always bring them back at any point just because you are painting onto the layer mask and not affecting the actual image itself. So to add a layer mask, it is this sort of Japanese flag type looking image icon down here. Just click on that, and as you can see, it has added this white square next to the icon for the image, and it should be the layer mask that is highlighted. And you want that to be highlighted, not the image layer, because we are going to be painting onto this. Now you come to the paintbrush tool, and by default it should pretty much start off at black if black is one of your set colors, but you want black because the layer mask is white. White will allow anything to come through, but black will hide things. So if you paint black onto certain areas, let me reduce the size of this brush. If you paint black onto certain areas, hopefully you can see this. If I painted that now, it would hide those areas, and it's only affecting this layer because this mask is attached to that layer. So it's a case of just clicking your way around the image to gently blend this into the background. Now to help that, you can alter the hardness of the brush. If I come down to 0, hopefully, as you can see there, the amount of the blue that is showing through is a lot smaller, and that's because the outside edge there's hardly any pixels being taken away. That's not to say that no pixels are being taken away. It's just that there's very few pixels being taken away, so you can do a gentle blend rather than a very harsh erasing of the background you don't want. Another thing you can do to help with this is the altering of the opacity of the brush. Mine is set at 75 at the 100 at the moment, but I'm going to drop it down to 75, and again this will help with the blending of this particular image. So now it's just a case of a slightly better brush size. Let's come up to, I don't know, somewhere around the, oh, it's easier to type this in, somewhere 2500 mark. So the thing you do have to remember when you're doing this is that although I have a very low hardness and opacity, is not to say that some of the area that you want to keep may end up being removed, but we can come back to that and paint black onto the image, and I will do that after I've done this. So the thing I want to do really first is to get rid of the very straight lines around the outside, so that you know that that is obviously a picture. And I will just, because I've got a 75% opacity, it will do this slightly quicker. I mean, if you really want to do this quicker, you could come up to 100%, because it is a bit time consuming, especially as far as the video is concerned, because you don't want to sit there for hours watching me remove a lot of this background. And I know I am taking away some of the image, but as I said, I'm not too worried about that at the moment. At the moment, I'm concentrating more on the edge of the image, which is why when I cropped it, I didn't come right up to the top of their heads. I just removed some of the foliage that I don't want. There we go, that's pretty much close to that. And what I will do now is I will reduce the opacity down even further, and I'll come down to about 10%-ish, 12% that will do, and I'm going to reduce the size down to just 500, so it's a much smaller brush, and then just come a bit closer. We don't necessarily really want to see bushes growing out of their heads like that. Just get rid of the last few remnants of the outside of image where the sides of the photograph could be seen. Right, I think I've taken away as much of the background that I want. I just want to bring back some of their, their part of the photograph when they're in it. So this is now where we're going to paint white. So I will change the colours. So white is the foreground colour. And like I said before, when you have white on a layer mask, it will reveal anything that's underneath. So I've still got a fairly low hardness and opacity, and I will just slowly bring back some of the areas. In fact, the opacity might be a bit too low now. Let's come around the 50% mark just to speed things along a bit. There we go. Right, that's fairly good enough, I think. I mean, the foliage may be still creeping back into this, so I can always come back to black and just try and nudge some of this foliage out of the way again. So this is the beauty of using a layer mask rather than erasing, because if you had erased this all and then decided to bring some of it back, you really couldn't have done without restarting. I think that's about as close as I'm going to get with the foliage that's coming out of their heads, and I will leave that as it is. And now it comes to looking at the blending modes for the layer. Now you need to come off of the mask and click onto the layer itself. Both of them will be highlighted because the mask is linked to the layer, but you can always close that down. Now it starts off at normal, and you could effectively just run down the different blending modes to find one that works with your image and your background. And like I said in the introduction part of this, is multiply, screen, overlay, soft light, hard light are probably the 5 main ones, but you can use whichever one you want. I mean, hard light is not too bad, but the background is showing through. But like I said, there are a lot more blending modes in Affinity Photo than there ever were in PhotoPlus. Now, considering that luminosity gives you that blue image, I'm guessing this might have been the blending mode that Martin used when he made his original. But what I'll do is I will leave it on normal, but as you can see, the background is slightly coming through this image, which is, I find, slightly distracting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this layer, or the layer and layer mask. So I'll just right click on this and click duplicate, and I will change the blending mode of this one to hard light, so it is working in conjunction with the normal one underneath, because if I turn off the normal one there or the hard light one there, Hopefully you can see how much of an improvement I think that is. Now, just to make sure that these two are working together, in case I decide to move or resize later, I'm going to hold down the Control key, click on this one so they're both highlighted, and then right click the top one and click Group. So these are now all grouped together, and if I wanted to move them, it will move in unison, and they won't go out of a line. Right, what I'm going to do now is I'll just bring this back down. So we come to the next image, which is number 35. Nope, not 35, it's 21. Here we go, 21. So I can't really crop anything off of this one. So I'll just do select all, edit, copy, come back to this image and edit, paste. So again, we need to resize, so I'll come over to a corner node, hold down the Control key, and then click and drag to reduce the size, and move it down to where I think it will go. Let me just maybe make that slightly bigger. I'm not overly worried about too much about it overlapping so much, because I'm going to be removing some of this background area around here anyway. So basically it's just a repeat process of what went on before. So with that layer highlighted, add a layer mask, come to the Paintbrush tool, black will be your color, my hardness is 0, opacity I'll just nudge this up again to about 70-75%, and I'm going to increase the size of the brush back up to the 2000-ish mark. There we go. So it's just a case of once again clicking or holding down the left mouse button and moving around the image just to remove some of these straight edges. Again, like before, I'm not going to worry too much about removing some of the image I want to keep eventually. I'm just really using this to get rid of the straight edges, and then I will just lower the opacity down again, lower the brush size to around about the 500 mark, and then just help with the blending of this. There we go, that's got rid of the edges hopefully, and then I'll just come onto the white and I'll bring the opacity up high just to bring back the areas that I do want to keep, without hopefully bringing too much of the background into the process. So I think I've revealed a bit too much of that straight edge along the bottom there. We come back to the black, and I'll just slowly remove a little bit of that straight edge so it's not such an obvious photograph. So it's a case of just using either black or white to reveal or hide the areas that you want to lose or keep. So I will leave that one like that, and I will keep the normal blending mode, and I won't duplicate it this time because I think this one is a much better image for not allowing the background to show through, so I don't need to, in my opinion, duplicate it and change the blending mode of the duplicated layer I should say. But what I can do at this point is I can unhide the yellow background so you can see what that looks like on the yellow. So that's what it looks like on the blue, and that's what it looks like on the yellow. I mean, for my personal opinion, I think the yellow would work better. And you could even tone down that yellow. Maybe that yellow even there might be a bit bright. But I will continue to work on the blue layer for now. So the next one I want to do is number 35 here, and again I will just crop some of this off that we don't need, because I'm going to be deleting most of that anyway. And then select all, edit, copy, come back to the image, and then edit, paste, come to the move tool, come to a corner, hold down a control key and resize this, and then move it to roughly where I want it. Just double check with Martin's original. Yes, that was above there. I can delete some of this off down the bottom here, so I will lower this down over that image slightly. Let me just reduce the size a little bit. There we go. Let's try it there. Right. So again, like before, add the layer mask. Come to the paintbrush tool. Black is your color, and the opacity is probably a tad higher. Just go back down to the 70-75 mark. Hardness is still on 0, and the paintbrush size, I'll just nudge this back up again. There we go. And like I said, I'm going to be deleting a lot of this off at the bottom here, so let's just be quite harsh about this bit here. I'll bring back the some of it a bit later. Let's just remove. It looks like I'm pretty much removing the whole image here, but there we go. Right, I'm going to make the size much lower, change to white, and then I'm just going to bring back as much of the image as I feel is suitable. Alright, so I'm not going to sit here and make the video showing how I did all the different images that I'm going to add to this. But what I will do is I just want to say that, you know, it's all a case of adding the different images and repeating the process over and over again of add an image, add a layer mask, use a paintbrush to remove the areas that you don't want, and you can change back to white to bring back some of the areas you do want. So I will just go away, I will add the images up until the very last image, and then I will come back and I will add the last image. So bear with me, I'll be back in a sec. Okay, welcome back. Right, as you can see, I've put on almost all of the pictures now, and they are all in the normal blend mode, and apart from this one, which was the one layer was normal and one layer was hard light. But I just want to sort of this come back at this point just to say that I've only got the one more picture to go. If we come back to Martin's one here, and this is the tiger image here, and obviously the text. And I'm a little bit worried about having enough room here, and this is the beauty of doing all this on different layers, because I can click on a layer and the move tool, and I can just nudge these various items around, and sometimes it's probably better to use the arrow key just to do minor movements rather than dragging with the mouse, which obviously is a bit quicker, but I'll just bring these down a tad. Now, bringing that down, I've brought part of the top of this image, which I didn't delete because it was off the page, so I didn't know it was there. So I'll just come to the mask and the brush tool, make sure that black is the colour, and I'll just get rid of this bit at the top here. It's got quite a low opacity. I'll just nudge this up slightly to speed up the process. So if you do move them around like I just done, just be aware that you may bring on part of something that you haven't deleted because it was hanging off the page and wasn't noticeable. So hopefully I've now got a bit more room for the tiger image. Let's come back to, which I think is this one here. So I'll just select all, edit, copy, come back to the main image and then paste. Now this is a much bigger picture, so if I come to the move tool, as you can see the rest of the image is hanging off the side of the main image, but it's easy enough to alter. Just come to the corner node, anyone, it doesn't matter which, hold down the control key and just drag inwards to it's roughly the size you want, and then just click inside the image and move it to the position you want. And then you can always just tinker with the size. Didn't mean to rotate that. Alright, just I put it about there, and about that size, it leaves me enough room to put the text in at the top there. So it's just a case of, like before, add in the layer mask, come into the paintbrush tool, and then erasing this, so just increase the size slightly, and then I will just erase via the layer mask the background that I don't want by painting black onto the layer mask and not the level. I'm going a bit mad with this top part here because I definitely don't want all of that. And I may just have to lose a little bit of these front pores there because you've got the obvious line of the photograph edge there. In fact, I'll probably go a bit over the top here, and then I'll come back with the white brush and hopefully make that a bit better. I'm going to lower the opacity down as I get near to the tiger, just to sort of help blend in some of this background without it being such a steep or harsh blend. There we go, I'll leave it at that. What I will do is I will just zoom in. I can see better where the raise it up again, where these pores are showing the line of the image. So what I would do now is I will reduce the size of this quite considerably down to, let's say 50-ish. Come to white as the colour, and I will just bring back just the pores, and hopefully not really any of that edge of the photograph. If I do go a bit too far, you can always come back to black and just remove some of that. There we go. I think that's a little bit over the ears, and I think I just nicked a bit off the tail there. Right, now what I'm going to do with this one is I will, because at the moment the layer mask is what's highlighted, and I want to highlight the layer rather than the layer mask, so I'll click on that, and much like I did with the first layer, I am going to duplicate this, mainly because I think as it stands like that, the tiger doesn't really stand out so much. It's slightly blurry, and by duplicating it, hopefully that will highlight it a bit more. It does bring out the background a bit more. You should be able to, let me just, I click on the icon for the layer mask and come to black. Let's increase the size. You might be able to just helpfully remove some of that extra detail that's been brought back into the background area off of this layer. Let's just bump up the opacity a tad. Let's try the mask from the layer below. Just have to get rid of a bit more of that background. That's the trouble with zooming in, you get to see what you miss from a distance. Right, that will do. Let me just, so I'm going to highlight, press Control and highlight both of these layers, and then I will group them together, just so that if I do want to tinker with moving them around, they will now be joined together. I'll just press Control and 0 to zoom out to the size that I want. So now it's just a case of adding the text. So I'll come to the frame text tool, and I will draw a box roughly where I want this. Let's drag this down. Oh, I need to be on the move tool. Come on. That's it. The computer was lagging slightly there. Probably objecting to all the amount of work I'm getting it to do. Right, so I've got a text box where I want it. I'll come back to the text tool now I've moved it, and I'm going to select that the text starts off centered, and the text selection I'm going to go with is called Berkshire Swash, which I think was a free font I got from fontbundles.com, I think they're called. Mainly because I thought it looked exotic and was quite good, so I'm going to just type in Egypt. I know you can't see this at the moment, but and then Tunisia. So I'll just highlight both of those, and then I'm going to increase their size. Might need to be quite big. Let's go up to, let's make that 96, and then I'll just highlight Tunisia and I will drop that down. Let's try that, because I'm doing that because on Martin's version he had Egypt much bigger than Tunisia, so I'm sort of going for the same effect. So I can now move this over if I want to sort of get it more visually centered. I know it's not actually in the center, but it's now more visually centered between these two images at the top here and the tiger below it. So technically that is where this would be where Martin finished. One last little flourish that I've added is I found this Egyptian hieroglyphics image, and I'm just going to add that. So select all, which it hasn't done. Yes, it has. Edit, copy, come back to this image, and then edit, paste, and then I'm going to put it roughly down here, and then the blend mode I'm going to make it multiply, because it is just a black and white image. Multiply I should say, hides any white in the image, so it will just show you the black. It's just a little thing. I think it helps bring back a little bit of the Egyptian flavour. So this is where I'm going to leave it, and we'll just have a quick look at what it would look like with the yellow background. It's up to you whether you prefer the yellow or the blue. I personally prefer the yellow, but that is this montage making video finished. I hope Martin gets something out of this, and I hope others do as well. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.